like in order to grow a space ecosystem, you need to have space experts. And for that, you need to educate the next generation, young people.
There's so much, such incredible talent, which goes so deep into their individual domains that we have all the ingredients. We just need to unlock them now and start going to space.
In this special episode, our first with two guests, we're going to talk with Marco Tempest, techno-magician working at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, at the MIT Media Lab, and ETH Space these days, as well as Dr. Nanja Strecker, innovator, leader of the European Space Agency's business incubator in Switzerland, and one of the founders of ETH Space. We're going to talk about ETH Space, how it took off, and what it means for research, teaching, and innovation today. This is the We Are ETH podcast, and I am Susan Kish, your host. Nanja and Marco, welcome. One of the magics of today's technology is I'm in Boston, Nanja, you're in Zurich, and Marco, you're in Abu Dhabi?
Yes. Been happy to be on the show.
Thank you so much. And we're in a digital way. We're all in the same place. So space is, as a wonderful quote of that show that I watched every Friday night at 9 o'clock when I was growing up, space is the final frontier where no one has gone before. What is the magic of space? Why are we as humans so darn fascinated with it? What do you think, Marco? Why is it we look at the stars beyond and go like, gee whiz?
Something which I really love about space, it's this theme which brings us together. Like if we imagine humanity grows up from being teenager to an adult, then space exploration is something that can unite us. It doesn't, there are no borders. They're like, we all have the same endeavor. We're all curious and we want to know. We want to know how this place came about, how the universe was created. We want to expand the horizon of knowledge. And we want to know, is there life elsewhere in this universe? So it's this common theme that unites us in a peaceful, curious, reasoned way.
I completely confirm what Marco said in terms of the questions not answered yet, for which you need space and space missions, etc. That's obviously very inspirational also for the students. You know, we launched the new Master in Space Systems last year, and the topic draws for its inspirational power a lot of students. I'd like to bring another point to it, though. Given I also support startup companies and part of the ESA Business Incubation Center, there are two aspects related to space that make it very exciting. One thing is, like, usually with space, you associate deep tech, high tech, cutting edge, etc. And so, like, what happens to some companies is that if they have proven or can say that their technology, their software, their hardware is used in space, they directly gain a lot of credibility with companies and sectors on Earth. So we had that for some, you do something in space and you do it then for the automotive sector. And given you've done already something in space, the credibility is there, which is for a startup company usually a bit of a challenge. And the other aspect from a company perspective is that it's a nice marketing story. So like if you... We have a lot of but we have to acknowledge it. We have a lot of companies in the portfolio which pursue applications for sectors and businesses on Earth, and they do also, as one business vertical, they do space. Now it's often then the space application a bit more niche. It's for many of them not developing into a large business. But the value it brings for sure is if you do something in space, you can make a very nice marketing story out of it. And again, it can, to close the loop, can have a benefit and, synergies with your business on Earth.
Very cool. So is there a particular profile of the entrepreneur that you work with who sort of sees that potential and goes, you know what? I'm going to try this under extreme conditions, and space is like the ultimate extreme condition. Let's see how that works.
Is there a
Are those?
stereotype of entrepreneur
Yeah.
for that? Like the ones that pursue space startups, be it purely for space or some part of it for space, the majority of them in Switzerland come out of the two tech schools, being EPFL in Lausanne and ETH
Right.
in Zurich. This is like the majority of startups we support come from these two schools. So that's a common profile amongst them. And then you need to be, you need to dare, you need to want to do something big, something ambitious. And quite honestly, to say something a bit more critical, but I'm happy to mention that. At the moment, the pure space startups that we support in Switzerland all come out of EPFL. We have great startups
Oh,
at
that's
ETH,
fascinating.
where space is one business vertical, or with space data or stuff like that. We have great ones. But what we don't have at ETH yet is the pure space startups. Like, for example, with a new rocket or a new type of satellite or a ride-sharing service or a kickstage
Hmm.
spacecraft, etc. They come out of EPFL. And we're still debating a bit why this is the case. I think we identified some factors. And we are also pushing for more pure space startups out of ETH now. So I do that also beside the ESA Business Incubation Center for Switzerland.
Fascinating. Marco, what I always remember was that you made the things that I sort of had as an abstract image every time I would, read a science fiction or a fantasy book or try to imagine things. You would make it real. And that gave me, in other words, courage, right? To think and to dream beyond it. Because it does feel like you also connect two worlds. You connect the world of the visual and the experience with the world of the abstract and the imagination. You make these things feel possible. Why do you think that's so applicable to this world of space?
I think, like looking at academia, it's sometimes good to have some fresh eyes, you could say, like somebody who can, or a team which can look at what you're currently doing and maybe identify other places this could be used. So if we look at, so maybe a little bit to my role at ETH Zurich Space.
Please.
I'm the co-founder of a function which we call the Pi Innovation Hub. It's kind of a new approach to bridge ETH's, you could say, research excellence with actual space mission implementation. So what we've observed is that there's a lot of incredible research going on that would have clear applications for space, like from AI algorithms to robotics to advanced materials, biotech, and so on.
Yeah.
But sometimes for the researchers, it's quite hard to imagine a space application beyond their current scope of research. So in other words, they might not know that they are actually already doing space or something that is very quickly applicable to space. And if you look at the current proposal pipelines for large space agencies, the traditional and funding processes often take 5, 7, 10 years, and that leaves a lot of good ideas on the cutting floor. So what we're trying to do with the Innovation Hub is accelerate this access to space. So to give professors and students and the ecosystem which is attached to them, the Swiss local ecosystem, access to space experimentation within their studies. So in 1 year or 2 years, we could qualify some of their research and do space experiments together with them.
So, Nanja, can you define deep tech? It's one of those terms that seems like it has a definition when I talk to people in Europe, but a different definition in the US. And what is deep tech?
A very good question. You caught me on that one. For me, there's not so much of a difference between deep tech and high tech and so on, but it's like which has a high degree of sophistication and, for example, has its origin in an academic institution like ETH or EPFL, but it can be hardware, it can be software. Nowadays, it's like a combination often of hardware and software. And, if you, in comparison, for example, there's aspects, for example, of the food sector that are deep tech in the production, in the packaging, etc. But the product itself, food, is, or except for processed food maybe, I don't see quite so much as deep tech or high tech. And I don't want to do bad to the food sector at all, but, to give it a concrete example. Yeah. Marco, do you see it differently? You want to add something?
To me, deep tech is kind of where the inventors are, like where it's not innovation, which a lot of times is bringing a few pieces which already exist together, reconstituting them into something which can do a new thing. For me, deep tech is the true inventors, the people who work on crazy complex things. A lot of it is applied science in these deep tech companies.
Mm-hmm.
These are the companies which usually have a hard time finding funding because a lot of what they do is so far out or might not work, right? Kind of like.
Well,
So, yeah.
and Marco, to that, I agree partially, but not fully. And I think that's also good for this podcast. I think you said very nicely, deep tech often has its origin in inventions and intellectual property and patents, for example, at these academic institutions like ETH or EPFL, etc. So with that, I fully agree. With the ones the deep tech that doesn't find investors so easily, I don't fully agree because I supported over 80 of them by now with our program, with my team, etc. And there is several really great deep tech startups which are good and which found funding easily. We have one even that got an over a double-digit million of development money only from big tech, corporates from the US because it's so unique what they do. So they didn't even need to fundraise so quickly. Just to give one example. Yeah.
So who is Thomas Zurbuchen? Can you just explain who he is? His background is unique and he seems an important part of the equation, but many of our listeners may not know who he is.
He studied physics at the University of Bern and then went off to the US for a long ride, was the longest serving science director at NASA. And then he retired at the end of 2022 from NASA. And then with some interesting journey came to ETH as of August 2023 and is the director of ETH Zurich Space and also the new ETH Geolab that I mentioned before. And Marco, please add.
Sounds like he's quite the rock star in the world of space.
He's a total rock star. It's a fantastic leadership. And he has let's say, the convening power through his long experience in the space sector, in government and private industry, to really connect the team at ETH and the institution to really high quality, interesting collaborators. So certainly provides a lot of speed and strategic guidance to the organization.
And Susan, just to add, thanks to Thomas, space became a strategic topic at ETH. It was not like this before.
Funny how that works. So Nanja, how did you get him to come to ETH Space?
Yeah, it's a bit of a fun story, and so I'm happy to talk about it. I hope Thomas doesn't mind, but I think he wouldn't. Thomas was at ETH in fall, I think November 2022, when he was still at NASA as a science administrator. And he got a doctoral honorary award at ETH, initiated by our great Department of Earth and Planetary Science, which is always ranked as the leading one in the world for many years. And so there were first discussions, etc. And then we got an email by our president, ETH president Joel Meso, in January. The chances are not very low that he could be interested. And from there, it was March 1st in 2023, and Thomas was here, and I accompanied him the whole day. We organized a nice day at ETH, showing all the great things we were doing, where there was potential. And then it went all very quickly, and then he decided to join. And in May 2023, it was communicated, and on 1st of August 2023, he was there. So that's the true
Wow.
story of how
That's
Mr.
great.
Professor Dr. Zurbuchen came to ETH.
So just let's talk about the ETH in space. You've talked about the sort of profile and background of many of the entrepreneurs you're seeing in the ESA incubator program. And Marco, you've talked about sort of helping these scientific research disciplines imagine how they can take their work and apply it to it. What makes ETH a good home for this, right? Because I'm not sure it would have popped to the top of my mind. And maybe, Nanja, I can start with you, because it sounds like you've been here since it was just a twinkle in someone's eye as a founder.
Well, quite honestly, to many people outside ETH, it was totally obvious since a long time that ETH should have space as a focus area. And
Really?
ETH came rather late, yes. So in Switzerland, for example, EPFL had the EPFL Space Center since over 10 years. The University of Zurich, since over 5 years, has a space hub. Also, the big tech universities, MIT, but also Cambridge, others, have focus areas on space, but ETH didn't. So, like, students were pushing and others were pushing, and then we got to it.
So how did you get involved?
Yeah, like it started organically. Like as I said, I was leading the ISABIS Incubation Center. I'm still doing this. And I think in 2021, there came a new bidding process for another space initiative in Switzerland out there. And it's actually Professor Sascha Quanz from the physics department and myself. We approached like people from the executive board of ETH that we should get involved in that and as a junior partner, etc. And we did. And eventually said, listen, like we cannot do only these initiatives, but ETH itself needs to get set up for a space. And thanks to Sascha and possibly also myself and my team, we convinced the board. And then ETH Zurich Space was started in October 2022.
Marco, how would you answer that question of why ETH? And what gives you the confidence that ETH will be a leader in this area?
So I think that, as I mentioned before, like there's just this incredible buffet of research and talent at ETH. And so many of them don't quite know yet that they could be doing space, right? So the Pi Innovation Hub, the function I'm part of, we have like these three core functions, I would say. So the first thing is we work across departments to identify these researchers which have genuine space application that we think have the readiness for execution. We look for things that could compress the timeline and could immediately lead to space experiments. In parallel, we also incubate novel concepts. We have ideas of our own, and then we try to find internal champions, professors, which might want to join in these topics. Then secondly, we try to move very, very quickly from a concept to a working demonstration. That could be as simple as, will it survive space? Like maybe we can put it on a tiny little CubeSat, sending it up and see if an instrument can survive. Right. That can provide the evidence to space agencies and industry partners to commit to larger investments, to do the next phase, to like mature this experiment into an actual mission. And then the third function is we kind of try to build bridges across the space community, Swiss industry partners, and also international collaborators. So to create these relationships that can turn the demos into actual mission concepts. And I think, as I said, like the ETH is just, there's such incredible talent, which goes so deep into their individual domains that we have all the ingredients. We just need to unlock them now and start going to space.
And if I can ask another question, you mentioned in passing that in the last year that ETH launched a master's program around space and ETH space. Why a master's program? Is it a 1 or 2 year program? It takes a lot of work to get a master's program up and running.
So at ETH and all over Switzerland, there was no master's program in space at all. So it's really the first ever in Switzerland. And actually, students were pushing for that for quite some time. You know, there's the academic space student organization called ARIS in Zurich, and they were discussing this, but it needed a Thomas Zurbuchen to make it work. And why is it important? You know, like in order to grow a space ecosystem, you need to have space experts. And for that, you need to educate the next generation, young people. And like the companies that we are supporting with the ETH are big, but also companies from abroad, which might have a subsidiary in Switzerland, and I will come to one in a second, they need experts. They need people to hire. And for that, you need a master's program and well-educated people. And that's why we are educating them to either work in the private sector afterwards or to pursue academic careers.
Excellent. So it sort of gives you a pipeline of interested, committed, well-prepared talent.
Exactly.
So
and I want
researchers.
something I want to mention in this direction. Cannot disclose any names. But given ETH is pushing so much in terms of space, we have international companies interested in having subsidiaries in Switzerland. And one important space company from the US, and I can obviously not disclose any name, we are currently in discussions and they will most probably have their European headquarters in Switzerland. And for that, they need, students to hire. They will probably also bring some experts themselves, but they could also benefit from the students from the master.
Very, very cool. So, Marco, on the website, you're listed as the director and co-founder of the Pi Innovation Hub at ETH Space. And it sounds like you are extraordinarily good at helping people understand and therefore visualize through stories and your magic what the near future is. So can you paint some of those pictures? Can you tell some of those stories?
So I think the story of Switzerland's space future is not quite written yet, but if it's up to me to decide or to envision it, then it will have to do with some of our values that we treasure here in Switzerland. Things like neutrality, creating a platform for others to meet and figure things out and harmonize. Things like the Red Cross or disaster prevention, first responder thing, like the things which makes us unique as a small country, but a big player when it comes to values that are associated with humanity.
And to have a concrete example for what Marco nicely described, there is a startup in Switzerland called Space Talk that would like to really map all like spacecrafts flying around, having the awareness for everybody. And there it's exactly the Swiss role of neutrality and that we talk to all nations and etc. So they talk to China, they talk to the US, they talk to all countries and to map this. So that's a concrete example of that. And maybe to add what Marco said, because like I think the listeners, the audience of this podcast are not really space experts. The lunar economy is going to be real. So like a lot of missions are going back to the moon. Also one from ETH, for example, Lunar Leaper, that wants to explore kind of caves on the moon to understand like if future, people living on the moon could have this as a habitat or what they can learn from that. And a space economy is going to be real. So there will be, presence, habitats on the moon. There might be astronauts living for some time on the moon. There will be, mining of special minerals, materials on the moon. There might be things produced on the moon. For non-space experts, this is going to happen, and it's happening.
Very cool. Thank you all. That has been a great and inspiring conversation. Nanja, for both of you, I love your website. And I love sort of the timeline about space exploration and the man on Mars or person on Mars in the 2020s. I think it gives a vote of confidence to where that's going. And thank you so much for joining this morning.
Thank you for having us. Thank
Exactly.
you.
Great pleasure as well. And that we could so prominently, talk about the topic of space and its new importance at ETH Zurich Space. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. So I'm going to close with a set of standard questions that we ask all of our guests on this podcast. And the first one is, when you were a little boy and a little girl, what did you want to be when you grew up? Nanja, I'm going to start with you.
I don't know the perfect word in English, but a decorator for department store windows. Like where. Yeah, something a bit creative, and I am creative. If you see, for example, I'm wearing always thousands of these. How do you call these?
Bracelets?
Bracelets, exactly. And most of them I do myself. I need something
how
creative,
cool.
and I need something doing with my hands in my life parallel to my work.
Very, very cool. Marco, what did you want to be?
I wanted to become a magician. So I
Did
guess,
you really? Oh, that's so
yeah.
cool.
So I guess I'm super privileged that this all worked out.
That's very, very cool. Second question. What are you curious about now? What is it you're reading about and learning about? Marco, what tweaks your interest right now?
Currently, I'm incredibly interested in narrative and storytelling, things I did intuitively for the better part of my life. Now looking a little bit at the neuroscience of that and kind of how all these things come together. There are so many interesting theories. So I'm very curious to explore this area.
Very cool. Nanja, what about you?
Now, I want to mention two things because one relates to what I'm really reading right now. I mentioned about my creative side and doing handcrafted things. So I'm very much into flowers for a long time. My family had always a garden with very nice flowers. So I'm learning how to do flower bouquets and flower, how can you call it, the wheels, or what you have for the before Christmas, etc. So that's
wreaths, like Christmas wreaths that you put on your front door.
yeah, and stuff like that, exactly. So that
how cool.
I'm presently into it. But in terms of reading, I also want to mention a great book which I brought with me.
Can you read the title?
The Culture Map in English. And it's by an American professor at IMD in Paris. And it talks about differences of cultures and communication across the world and the pitfalls you can have, etc. And I recommended it to some startups already because if they explore, for example, international markets, one was just in Japan for 3 months. And I recommended her the book, and she said, "Oh, now I understand the issues I had and challenges I faced, etc." So highly recommendable because it has a lot of hands-on examples from the business world around the world.
Very cool, Nanja. Any other books you'd love to recommend?
Well, I have a second one with me.
Great.
Now I have
perfect.
Now I have to say this one I did not read myself yet, which is the Space Economy by Chad Anderson from Space Angels. He's pushing a bit his company as well, I heard from my colleague who is reading it. But it's a nice introduction into what the space economy is, what it encompasses, what kind of companies there are, etc. And it's easy to read.
Outstanding. Marco, what are you reading and what are you curious? I mean, you talked about what you're curious about. What books are you reading right now?
Right. So very topical is The Science of Storytelling by Will Storr. It explores the neuroscience of storytelling, and it's just, it's quite magical. It's one of these books you don't want to read in one go. You want to have a notebook next to it and take notes and savor it over multiple days. Another book is Mindware, Tools for Smart Thinking by Richard Nisbett. that book is it's a little bit like a manual for for your mind, kind of like avoiding biases, things which we intuitively do wrong or interpret wrong if we don't know about them, like statistics, or like how long should you look for an apartment before you decide on one? Should you always order the same thing when you go to a restaurant, or is it better to try something new every time? These kind of things really nicely deconstructed with a little bit of neuroscience and statistics and poking at your biases. Fantastic book, Mindware by
And
Nisbet.
okay, but Marco, let's be real. When you go to a restaurant, you go many times, which camp are you in?
I ordered, if I had a good experience, I ordered the same thing. If I had an amazing experience, I'm not going to go to the restaurant again, because there's a very high chance that that was one of these
Oh,
the best
fascinating.
days when they just did it so right, kind of it's not in the center of the distribution, then it might be just time to try a new one. If they 100% satisfied you, go to the next new thing.
That's fabulous. I have to say, again, on your website, I was thrilled that the first book you recommended for ETH Space was A Wrinkle in Time, which is one of my all-time favorite books. And actually, back when I was at TED, it was one of the ones I curated at the bookshop, because I just think it's a wonderful way for anyone, regardless of age, to be thinking about the world differently. Anyway, fabulous. Thank you. And then finally, when you're in Zurich, what is your favorite place to have a cup of coffee?
I have two. I was
Excellent.
at one today already. I think the one is called Lamassu. It's on the stairs to work, a very small thingy. And they have an excellent spot with a lot of people walking by, and they have excellent coffee. That is one. It's on, I think it's Leonhard's Treppe, walking up there, and yeah. And the other one is Hegifred at the Hegibachplatz. And there, Marco and I have a commonality, because he also frequents this one regularly.
So you bump into each other. This is great.
Yes.
Good. And Marco, what's your favorite place?
I love a super pedestrian place like Bell Café at Bellevue. This is a place where hundreds of people go in and out every day. It's not exactly craft coffee, but what's magical is they keep a communal feeling. They remember people's orders, hundreds of people's orders. They're always in a good mood. It's kind of it's almost like an institution, like stop by for a smile and for them remembering what you always have. It's quite a lovely place.
That is wonderful. Well, listen, on that wonderful note, I'm going to close and say thank you again to both of you. In this episode, we talked with Dr. Nanja Strecker and Marco Tempest about the joys of space, about working at ETH Zurich and how ETH Space started, and where it's going to next. I'd like to say thank you. My name is Susan Kish. I'm the host of the We Are ETH series, which tells and focuses on the stories of the alumni and friends of ETH, which is the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. ETH regularly ranks amongst the top institutions of the world in terms of its research, its science, and its people. The people who were there, are there, and the people who will be there. Please subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you listen, and give us a good rating if you enjoyed today's conversation on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. To close, I'd like to thank our producers at ETH Alumni and at LA Media, and especially thank you, our listeners, for joining us.